You ever see someone for the very first time and bam, you've already got an opinion? Of course you have. We all do. We're going to get into the hidden mental shortcuts our brains are running all the time and see how these split-second judgments literally build or sometimes completely bend our reality. Seriously, think about it. The last time you met someone new, or, just saw a stranger walking down the street. Before you could even consciously think, you probably had some kind of impression, right? Confident, shy, friendly, maybe a threat? Where does that even come from? Well, it's not magic. It's just your brain on autopilot. And here's the thing, that's not a bug, it's a feature. Our brains are getting hit with a tidal wave of social information every single second. So to cope, they create these instant judgments, these little mental shortcuts, just to help us get through the day efficiently. It all happens completely under the radar.
But, and this is the big question, right? What happens when those shortcuts misfire? Because as amazing as this system is, it is also prone to some pretty serious mistakes. Mistakes that can mess with our relationships, our decisions, and even our entire society in really profound ways.
So to really get this, we've got to look at the two competing systems running in our heads. You can almost picture it like a constant battle, a tug of war between taking the quick and easy shortcut versus doing a careful, thoughtful deep dive. Okay, so here's the breakdown. Over on the left, you've got System 1. That's your brain's autopilot. It's lightning fast, totally intuitive, and it's where that gut feeling comes from. Then on the right, you have System 2. That's the mindful, deliberate pilot. It's the part of your brain that kicks in when you stop and go, hang on, let me really think about this. But here's the catch. Most of the time, especially in social situations, we're letting System 1 run the show. All right, so let's zoom in on this fast system. How does it actually work when we're sizing up a single person? I mean, how do we go from just seeing someone to having a full-blown impression of them in just a few seconds?
So check this out. It's basically a mental assembly line. It starts with an observation. You see what someone is doing. From there, our brain makes a quick guess, an attribution, about their personality. Then, we stitch those guesses together into a final impression. But, and this is important, notice that arrow at the top? Sometimes our brain just leaps straight from observation to judgment, skipping the whole thinking part entirely.
And this brings us to one of the biggest bugs in our mental software. It's called the fundamental attribution error. See, when we watch someone do something, our default setting is to assume their behavior reflects who they are, not the situation they're in. Someone cuts you off in traffic, your first thought is, what a total jerk, not, maybe they're rushing to the hospital. We blame the person, not the circumstance.
Let's look at this two-step model in action. A man shoves past you. Okay, step 1, the automatic shortcut, System 1, instantly labels him as rude. But step 2, where you might learn he's rushing to his mother's deathbed and correct your judgment, well, that takes real conscious effort. That's System 2. And the scary part, a lot of the time, we don't even make it to step 2.
And believe it or not, it gets even weirder. Our mental shortcuts can actually create the reality we expect to see. So, say a teacher expects a certain student to be brilliant. They might give that student more attention, more encouragement, and what happens? The student, responding to that treatment, might actually start performing better, which then confirms the teacher's original belief. Our snap judgment literally became a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Okay, so we've seen how these shortcuts can totally mislead us when it comes to individuals. But what happens when our brain applies that same efficient but flawed system to entire groups of people? Well, that's when the stakes get much, much higher.
And that brings us to stereotypes. A stereotype is really just a belief. It's a mental file folder that connects a whole group of people with certain traits. Instead of taking the time to get to know each person, the brain just goes, oh, they're part of that group, so they're probably like this. It is the ultimate and arguably the most dangerous cognitive shortcut.
Then you get prejudice. This is what happens when that mental shortcut gets supercharged with emotion. It's the negative feeling, the dislike, the fear, the distrust that gets tacked onto the stereotype. It's not just a thought anymore. Now it's a gut reaction. And finally, discrimination is where that thought and that feeling turn into actual action. It's the negative behavior, the harmful action, directed at someone not because of who they are as an individual, but because of the group box we've shoved them into. And as you can see, this is a truly vicious cycle. Stereotypes fuel prejudice, which leads to discrimination. But it goes the other way too. Discriminatory systems can create and reinforce stereotypes, and prejudiced feelings make people look for beliefs to justify them. It's a powerful, self-perpetuating loop.
Now, Just for a second, I want you to imagine what it feels like to be on the receiving end of these shortcuts. Social psychologist Claude Steele gave it a name: stereotype threat. He was talking about that intense pressure, that gut-wrenching anxiety of knowing that you might be judged based on a negative stereotype about your group, no matter what you do as an individual.
And this is not just a feeling. It has a real, measurable, and, honestly, a shocking impact. Get this. Studies have shown that when a negative stereotype about a group's academic ability is just mentioned before a test, their performance can plummet by as much as 25%. Think about that. A cognitive shortcut in someone else's head can actively sabotage your own ability. It's wild. So is that it? Are we just stuck with this faulty programming? Is our brain's autopilot always in control? Well, the research says absolutely not. We can learn to override it. We can choose to engage that slower, more mindful, deep dive brain.
So how do we actually do that? One of the most powerful tools we have is something called the contact hypothesis. But the research is super clear. For contact to actually work, you need a very specific recipe. You need 4 key ingredients. The groups have to have equal status. You need real, personal interaction. You need to be working together on a common goal. And you need support from the top, from social norms and authorities. When you get all those conditions right, prejudice doesn't just fade, it can completely collapse.
And to understand why that recipe works, we have to look at social identity theory. Basically, a huge part of our self-esteem comes from the groups we belong to, our in-groups. So we naturally feel better about ourselves when we see our group as good, which often means seeing out-groups as, well, not so good. That kind of cooperative contact we just talked about, it shatters those us versus them walls, making it way harder to hold on to that artificial sense of superiority.
So here's the bottom line. This is what it all boils down to. We are not slaves to our stereotypes. We can override them. But it takes 2 crucial things. First, we have to be motivated. We have to genuinely want to be fair and accurate. And second, we need the mental energy, the cognitive capacity to actually stop, engage System 2, and see the person as an individual, not just a category. So the next time you meet someone new, the next time your brain offers up that instant, easy, effortless shortcut, you've got a choice. Are you going to stay on autopilot, or are you going to consciously decide to take the deep dive?